Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is out, and after about 20 hours of uninterrupted gameplay, I've beaten the story. Lots of people have opinions on the story because plenty of people got it early, and you know how that always turns out. And of course, the ending was divisive. Not even the ending, I should say, because the last bit of the story ends up actually constituting about half the game. But yes, the descendant characters end up diving out of a Doctor Strange portal at the very last second, and are able to hold the blights off for long enough that Link and Zelda can arrive to assist, and the champions are able to survive their fate. From here, the forces of good reorganize and re-advance, take back Akkala and Fort Hateno, and go on from there to reclaim Hyrule Castle and successfully banish Calamity Ganon once and for all. This is all because of our little eggy boy named Terrako, who turned out to be a childhood toy/companion for Princess Zelda. The descendants return to their own futures, and the game leaves us with a Hyrule that looks brighter than ever, full of optimism and hope. And people on the internet hated it. The biggest complaint people seem to have is very understandable, and it's that the game was very blatantly marketed by Nintendo as the events that take place during the Calamity. So for the game to pull a fast one on people and actually be something divergent could be seen as misleading advertising. A lot of people say they wouldn't have bought the game or have been interested in it if they knew it wasn't going to be a proper prequel. I am sympathetic to this idea. I felt very similar about the Final Fantasy VII remake, which had a similar twist. I'm hesitant to outright disavow misleading marketing as an objective negative though. Some of the most interesting games to have come out had misleading marketing. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, one of my favorite games of all time, utilized misleading marketing on purpose to reinforce the themes of its story. The conversation back when it was released was fairly similar to the one we hear about Age of Calamity now. People complaining that the advertising only showed Snake, but you end up playing as Raiden for most of the game. Of course, nowadays, conversation focuses on the fact that the theme of the game revolved around the idea that in the internet age, it's so easy to trick people into believing whatever you want without even lying, just being careful about how you present your information. So in retrospect, the promotional material making the game seem like it's Snake-centric, without outright saying that it is, was a practical meta example of the game's theme. I don't think discussion like that will ever happen retroactively to Age of Calamity. I'm just not willing to outright penalize Nintendo for it. The plot twist of the game wouldn't have been a plot twist at all if Nintendo blatantly marketed it as an alternate reality Zelda. But even then, I feel like part of the demo's purpose was to convey through the presence of Terrako that the game was going to take some liberties. The other argument I've seen very frequently is that the writing is bad and that it feels more like fan fiction. That I do take issue with. The writing certainly isn't a masterclass, but then again I think only one Zelda game can claim to be a masterpiece from a writing point of view. The quality of writing in Age of Calamity was, for the most part, very good, and if you separate your feelings on the ending from how it was actually written, it's no better or worse than the majority of Zelda finales. If Breath of the Wild didn't exist and people were meeting these characters for the first time in this game, nobody would be calling the writing fanfiction quality. I'm not saying that you need to like the choices they made, I'm saying that the writing isn't bad. If you want to see bad writing, check out the story for the first Hyrule Warriors. It seems obvious to me that this game's story was at the very least heavily guided by Nintendo, if not outright written. As I said, what is totally valid is having a negative opinion of the direction the game went in terms of its story. It is totally fair to really hate the fact that we didn't get a regular prequel, and that it turned out to be some sort of alternate universe time travel thing. I've seen people say that they feel like this lessens the impact of Breath of the Wild's story, which is also totally fair. I've seen it said that Nintendo just doesn't have the courage to show its characters losing, which again is totally fair. There's also some sadness and frustration from people who are under the impression that Breath of the Wild unified the timelines, because there's very much the possibility that the timeline was unified just to split again. All of these are totally and completely valid. So how do I feel about the ending? Well, like most things involving Zelda lore, it's complicated. I know how I felt going into the game. I've been very vocal on Twitter and Discord about how Terrako's appearance really worried me, and that I just wanted a regular prequel, that the game shouldn't be a what-if scenario or an alternate timeline, and above all else, please do not split the timeline again, pretty please. I was praying to Hylia that the time travel would be a self-contained loop, similar to Majora's Mask or Skyward Sword. I've had many conversations with people who tried to bring me around on the idea of a further split timeline, and a game that averts the calamity, but nobody ever succeeded. I certainly wasn't grouchy booting up Age of Calamity for the first time. The first Hyrule Warriors had a nonsense story, and I played it for over 200 hours, so a story I don't like or agree with is far from a deal breaker in a Hyrule Warriors game, or even for a Zelda game for that matter. But I certainly was booting up the game expecting to come out of it complaining about the plot twist I was sure was going to happen. After all, I expected the descendant characters to be added, but I expected it to be through bonus modes or unlockables. But then something interesting happened. The game went on and really downplayed the idea that Terrako was going to be able to save them from anything. Despite the advantage of knowing what was going to happen, Akkala was still taken over, the Guardians and Divine Beasts were still corrupted, and the champions were still trapped within the Blights. The game waited until the literal last second to perform the plot twist. Literally as the Blights were taking the killing shot on the champions before Doctor Strange opened a portal for the descendants to come out of. And it took literally a single moment, just one, to win me over and change my mind, at least a little bit.
Oh, this is how it ends.
I will not allow you to take her again!
Sidon?
Look, I'm not a very hard guy to make cry. It takes very little, and that line definitely made me tear up. I was still resistant throughout the game, and truthfully I am still resistant and not overly fond of the choice for the descendants to save the day. But as the game went on, I just couldn't bring myself to be angry or frustrated about the decision. Maybe it's just because 2020 has been such a tough year with so much depression and misery in it, and a year that has impacted my own well-being, but I couldn't bring myself to dislike getting to see everybody just be happy. I love these characters so much, and I don't think that characters I love should get a happy ending just for the sake of it, but I just can't lie and say that seeing Urbosa mentor Riju didn't make me extremely happy, or knowing that, in at least one reality, Sidon gets to grow up with a big sister. It's true that a big part of why Sidon is so likable is because of his boundless optimism in the face of such misery and grief, and that the reason that Princess Zelda was so motivational was because of the enormous personal sacrifice she underwent when she chose to knowingly step into Hyrule Castle for a centuries-long battle with Ganon. And I do understand that the existence of Age of Calamity does sort of defang some of that, but then I see Teba get complimented by the guy he idolizes, and that frustration just sort of went away. I don't know, I'm not normally a happy endings kind of guy, and I don't think that it applies in every scenario. If Aerith survives in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think I genuinely will take issue with it, but for whatever reason, maybe for reasons that really shouldn't impact my judgment like the state of the world, I think I'm okay with a happy ending where there shouldn't be one, just this once. I don't love everything about it. I thought the Yiga Clan becoming good guys was really silly and hastily done, for example. And my chief worry still exists. I really do not want another timeline split, or at least not one that impacts game order going forward. I'm perfectly okay with this just being a timeline twig. It points off in its own direction and Nintendo just leaves it there, not really revisiting it outside of maybe some story DLC for Age of Calamity. But I really do hope that we don't end up getting two separate strings of games going forward. That sounds more exhausting than the timeline already is. And those are my thoughts. I sympathize with people who are upset and disappointed, and logically, I think I still agree with you. But in my heart, I can't help but be happy. Those bastards knew what they were doing with Sidon and Mipha. Thanks for watching. I have a lot of Age of Calamity content coming out in the next few weeks, so please look forward to that. Also, my Discord recently got its 50th member. It isn't terribly huge, but it does get posted in every day, and I can always be contacted there if you want to chat about anything. I'm also on Twitter. Be sure to let me know what you think about the Age of Calamity ending down below. I look forward to hearing whether you loved the happy ending or hated it. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there. Keep your sword leveled up and make sure the seals are good, because it's dangerous to go alone.